Well, Wyatt, you showed us video of a woman who'd been wounded in the leg, an older woman in Donetsk, referring to her attackers as fascists. I mean, what is the ideological understanding of people on the ethnic Russian side of the Donbas, of the people on the other side of the contact line?
Well, there's, as you were saying, these people have lived and dealt with this firsthand. They understand this better than anyone in the West ever will have to. They're fortunate not to have to be on the receiving end of this kind of violence, the kind of violence that Alex was discussing, that he documented with those recordings. And I sent you over a video as well that I took with another woman, really about 50 meters from where I spoke with that old woman who was injured, the last woman, she said, living in the building. And this woman told us that Ukrainian nationalists were killing people here. She said they do not consider us to be human at all. They never considered us human. And this tracks with footage that was aired by Russian television of defectors, of armed forces of Ukraine defectors, who said that they were ordered by Ukrainian nationalists to execute civilians in this same city of Rubizhnoye. And they said that they refused. And, this was an incredibly scary moment, they said. And their punishment was that they were stuck in a pit. And while the nationalists decided what they were going to do with them, they got very, very drunk, they said. So drunk that they were able to escape and disarm these guys. And they defected to the other side. And, that was something that was confirmed to me by people like this.
Would you be scared of that reprisals against people like you?
Вы боитесь того или опасаетесь, что если бы Украина захватила обратно эти территории, к людям здесь живущим, принимавшим участие в референдуме, применены какие-то репрессии? Да, я думаю, да.
Got to listen through a lot of translation here, but you described it pretty well. But this is the woman that Wyatt interviewed.
She said that they were punishing people for being pro-Russian. And I conducted interviews with a guy named Johnny Miller, who works with Press TV. He's an experienced journalist who's covered a number of war zones, but because he wanted to come tell this side of the story, he was not able to work with any of the more mainstream organizations that he'd worked with in the past, and he has to work with Iranian media. They're the only people that will pay him to be out there and cover this. And so we went out, just spent a day going out, talking to people in this city near Severodonetsk that's been just totally bombed out and decimated. And this was just the overwhelming attitude of the people there. I'm sure there are some people that had some sympathies towards the Ukrainian side. I'm sure there are some spies, because they're all over the place on both sides of the front. But this was not a Potemkin village that was set up for us. This was us with a driver and a translator doing our thing, going out by ourselves. So, there was no FSB agent in the back seat telling people what to do or say. These are just, these are what people saw, they felt. And it's really no surprise to me that so many of them view Russian Federation forces, LNR forces, as liberators and not as occupiers, as we're told over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, it's like with the Crimean referendum, where there was an overwhelming vote in support of joining the Russian Federation rather than being part of this government that is openly hostile towards ethnic Russians. And we see the hostility playing out in the field in the areas that were retaken around Izium, for example, by Ukrainian forces. You see militia battalion commanders who are affiliated with the Azov neo-Nazi battalion putting out on social media, on Telegram, video of bodies being thrown in ditches after being executed because they were accused of being so-called fire spotters or collaborators. What would happen? I mean, how is it a shock that people in Crimea didn't want to be a part of that? Like they said it was a sham referendum. Why didn't they send observers? Why didn't the EU send observers then? Why didn't anyone from the West send observers to prove it was a sham? And then the same thing. I mean, people have been living under the rockets, bombs, artillery, grad rockets, whatever, for 8 years. They've seen their language, the Russian language, be essentially stripped as an official language. The Russian Orthodox Church come under attack, people killed, slaughtered, like at the Odessa Trade Union Hall in 2014. Why are we shocked that they voted to become a part of the Russian Federation? Like, it's just kind of doesn't stand to reason that they would want to be part of this regime that is actively at war with them. But right. That's kind of what we're being told. And so, you know, the question is, I mean, I was reading this piece in Foreign Affairs, the Journal of the Council on Foreign Relations, by Zelensky's former defense minister. And he's calling for a total victory. The West must arm Ukraine until total victory. And what does total victory look like? Well, first of all, he says, I mean, this is like death cult language. He says that Ukraine is willing to see all of its cities burned to the ground in order to achieve total victory. Number two, total victory is not possible unless the Russian Federation is balkanized and destroyed, because a free and sovereign Ukraine cannot exist next to Russia. And then number three, they have to recapture all territory, which means where you just were in Donetsk, which is almost exclusively ethnic Russian, Lugansk, and Crimea. So what would happen to the people there? It would be ethnic cleansing, prison camps, death camps, mass slaughter. And that's what we're supposed to be cheering on in defense of the liberal order?
It would be take no prisoners, like Markushvili said. Markushvili, I can't pronounce that name at all. But it would be take no prisoners, right? And this is something that we don't hear about in the West either. But I have heard from many people that, you know, what we don't hear about is there were 200, maybe 250,000 Ukrainian soldiers massed on the border of Donbas when this special military operation started, when this open hostilities kicked off in February. And they were planning apparently on coming in at the beginning of March. So what did Putin do? Well, he said, I'm not going to watch as these people are just slaughtered and wiped out by these people who view them as subhuman, as you know, non-humans, as the people are telling me. Just come through and run roughshod over all these people and just destroy them, you know, basically committed genocide against them. And, you know, I have no doubt that there have been some bad things done by Russian soldiers. You know, it's war. It's not a pleasant thing. And it makes people kind of crazy, and people are capable of doing bad things on either side. But there is not any, first of all, there's no reporting at all on what was effectively the first documented case of a mass grave. We've heard so much in the Western media about, mass graves, and they use pictures of grave sites where they have clearly, you have crosses sticking out on the ground, as though you're going to take the time when you're making a mass grave to like nail in little crosses and put on people's names and when they died. That's not what a mass grave is. This is the first instance that, as far as I'm aware, of an actual photographic documented evidence of somebody creating a mass grave. And it was just not mentioned at all. You can't find a mention of this anywhere in the media. They just totally ignored it.